This week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, with agriculture broadcaster Orion Samuelson and yours truly, Max Armstrong, and featuring agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier. This week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone.
This year's virtual Commodity Classic has come to an end, and corn growers find they still have lots to celebrate. Hello, folks. Welcome to This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson, excited to be sitting behind the desk this week while we talk about everything that's going on in agriculture. One of those things that's been going on, of course, is the Commodity Classic. This year it was held virtually due to the coronavirus pandemic. But even though it's virtual, a lot of work is still getting done. To help us understand what all is happening, John Linder, the president of the National Corn Growers Association, is with us. And John, give us your update. How do you feel about wrapping up the first virtual Commodity Classic?
Really pleased. You know, it's kind of amazing to look at the opportunity that folks took to actually attend from their home. And you can see I'm sitting in my kitchen, and that's where I've been doing a lot of my attendance when I'm not busy with other side meetings, and actually allows me to do a little bit on the farm as well, which is kind of unusual for this point in the calendar. You know, I'd be rushing from meeting to meeting and probably wouldn't even get to attend some of the learning sessions, but what a robust list. You know, we had nearly 6,000 registrants, and over 4,000 of those are farmers. And so that opportunity was taken wisely by farmers, and the opportunity to also see those recorded sessions, go back and visit one again, or the one you missed because you got called away, and do that by April 30th. I've actually taken some opportunity in the evening to visit some of the recorded sessions that I missed, and I saw it as a great opportunity and really rewarding for me to be able to see some of these in the same week that they take place. As president, I wouldn't have got to do it otherwise.
Right. A lot of changes this year, but some of them are for the positive. And John, when you think back over this past year as corn growers, it has been volatile between coronavirus, between hurricanes, between drought and the derecho. Growers, especially in the first half of the year, really faced a lot of challenges.
Mother Nature has been a rather interesting dynamic in the past few years for farming. I'd have to say that, you know, I thought 2019 was rough, and then along come 2020 and a pandemic. Goodness, who would have thought? But, you know, we come out pretty decent in agriculture on that space. We actually, at National Corn Growers Association, we brought together folks from our value chain and started thinking about how to, you know, short term, let's get some things in place that produce results in the next 3 to 5 years, so that our value chain rolls out of this very strong. And so we had a robust group of our folks in our value chain. You know, I couldn't name them all probably, but, you know, we had dairy, we had pork, we had poultry, we had beef, we had the ethanol industry, and I apologize for anybody I missed, but those folks really came together with us, and it was a great process, and we're starting to be able to implement some of those things as we move forward. The opportunity for us to see the markets where they are kind of bought us a little time, took a little stress off of that process, and allowed us to refine it a little further. So we're really thankful for that.
Yeah, well, let's talk about some of the improvements to the value chain or the changes that you're discussing. When you're talking with those stakeholders, what was brought up? What are some things that corn growers across the country might be needing to look at here in 2021?
You know, new uses, fledgling markets that are going to open up, but, you know, also looking at the exports and the re-engagement in what was TPP. I think it's CP, TTP. We need more acronyms, more letters in the acronyms to make it simple, right? But we're going to be fully engaged in that because there's such an appetite in the world for meat protein, and what a wonderful space for corn to be a feed ingredient in a value chain that produces multiple effects to our domestic economy, then moves offshore and brings back new dollars. So we are really looking at those opportunities with those folks. But, you know, sustainability is a great conversation that we've been working in that space and waiting until it's really more vogue. You know, the appetite in the new administration is to take up climate change, and boy, agriculture is right there, plays really well into this space, and we get to showcase all the great things that agriculture can bring in corn farming. You know, ferociously sequestering carbon. And you really couldn't talk about it a great deal until now. So we fit really well into this space, and we're excited to be there.
Corn growers certainly do. There's very few things that can put more carbon back in the soil. And of course, that helps our calculations when we're looking at liquid fuels, in particular ethanol. John, as you look out through 2021 and beyond, is ethanol still a market that's going to be vital for corn growers?
Oh, ethanol has a space going forward. You know, EVs are here. There's no question. There's an appetite for that type of vehicle, but biofuels in general still have a long term yet. There's a legacy fleet, and there's new cars being produced, millions of them every year. So until that, some of those aspirational goals get closer, we'll still have internal combustion engines, and biofuels will be critically important in that space as well as the heavier transportation. So we have a great fit, and we will play well in that space because of the unknowns that folks really, we're now talking science. Now we can talk about the science behind it. So we've worked decades in this space and in refining that. And so there's a lot of good information going to come, and a reason that this really fits. So we're happy to get out there with the Next Generation Fuels Act. So we'll get there with all the help for our corn farmers. Come along with us.
Fantastic. John Linder, President of the National Corn Growers Association. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by the Soybean Checkoff. Tips, videos, how-tos, and more. If it has to do with ag tech, you'll find it in the Tech Tool Shed, your unbiased one-stop resource. And we're chatting markets. We're talking with Joe Camp. He's the Director of Managed Programs with Comstock Investments. And Joe, earlier this week, we had export sales come out again. They disappointed the market. What's going on?
It's been the export demand that's been so friendly, these grain markets, for so long, and all of a sudden we face this bit of a lull in cash markets, and we're seeing that in the export data as of late. This week again, some poor numbers, particularly for corn, a marketing year low yet again. But it's, again, just that time of year, the season where big buyers like China are sitting back and wondering what will come out of South America here. And ultimately just a wait-and-see type mode for these cash buyers. A little bit lighter sales as of late, but still a huge piece of the puzzle for what has been a bullish market.
And it seems like ordinarily this time of year, when our attention turns to South America, in particular Brazil, usually there's delays with trucking, there are strikes, there's problems at the port that slow down the export of these grains. But so far this year, all of the slowdown in Brazil has been slow harvest. I don't think they've had any port or truck troubles to speak of quite yet.
It's not been the same in Brazil in terms of delays because of strikes, as you allude to, but instead a delayed harvest based off of weather, just being drier than normal early on, a late start for planting, and now it's of course too wet when they try to get the crop out. That affects the first soybean crop and of course the very important safrinha corn crop, that second crop that'll compete most heavily with U.S. exports in the months ahead. So we're seeing a delayed harvest for soybeans, a delayed second crop corn planting, but still good crops coming out of Brazil at this time of the year, which relates back to the first question, gives us a little bit of pressure right now.
So for this pressure, this slowdown in export demand, this focus of attention down to South America, Joe, how long do you anticipate to last looking at seasonals? When does the focus turn back to domestic concerns?
It should turn back pretty quickly as we start to hone in our focus on the new crop balance sheets. So we have some really key reports coming up. Next week we'll have an update on old crop inventories. We'll have a look at demand, but really quickly after that we're going to look ahead to the end of month March reports. That includes the prospective planning survey, and so we'll have a lot of shifting of thought towards what will the U.S. producer do for the next crop year?
Now, you talk to growers all across the country. We had USDA's Ag Outlook Forum 2 weeks ago. They threw out a number, 90 million acres beans, 92 million acres corn of new crop plantings. As I know we're still early in the season, but as you're putting together your balance sheet, are you using similar numbers as them right now?
Yeah, I believe it's a good start where we came from the February Outlook Forum, but it's an aggressive start, and that reflects what we know to be big plant acres coming back into the mixed year. And also right now, it's going to be interesting to see as we start off the spring, this interplay between what could be a very fast start for plantings because of a dry bias, as we're seeing but also acres trying to vie for more area in an environment where prices are higher.
All right, it is going to be an interesting year as we get into the growing season. As you mentioned, weather concerns are waiting. We'll pick back up and dive into these discussions a little further with Joe Camp from Comstock Investments. Well, we are digging into the markets with Joe Camp from Comstock Investments. And Joe, we've talked quite a bit about South America, but this time of year we have to. South American bean crop, we know they were late planted. We know they were hit with dryness, but we also believe that it's going to be a record large crop coming out of that country. Is that still the case?
Yes, unbelievable to think that we could have a Brazilian bean crop above 130 million tons, a record for them after the environment that we've seen, the dry weather environment, the drought that was incurred in a lot of key growing areas of Brazil and impacted. It was just the fact that they had planted so many more acres this last season to soybeans that brings them such a bountiful crop. We'll see how the export demand fares for it. We know, of course, as we mentioned, China waiting for that to come online, but it's a different market than we were seeing a year ago, for example, when US dollar terms against the real were a lot different as well. We've got better footing, U.S. exporters do, but it's still, again, that time of the year where there's a new crop online and China's going to go shopping there.
Right, and tons of boats already lined up down in Brazil waiting for this new crop to get shipped.
That's right. It's delayed, but it's on the way.
Yeah, so if you've got old crop bean bushels and you need to get them priced, you want to capture this rally, would you get them sold here sooner rather than later?
I think so, because we've seen such a strong rally. We can still have some patience and respect that the trend is higher, but yet to take advantage of what we know to still be generally robust basis levels. It's that time of year we'd want to move some grain and get it priced. There's always some reownership possibilities we could think about that would keep us in the market, and we know that farmers are not very far sold on the new crop too. That would give us some more comfort in letting go of those old bushels early.
All right. I want to turn our focus to the wheat market, Joe, because we've seen a lot this winter that has the market a little concerned about the wheat crop. We've got the expanding dryness in the western Corn Belt and the Great Plains. We've got massively cold temperatures over the past 2 weeks that stretched really far south into wheat country. What's your take on this wheat market?
Yeah, it's not just been winter kill fears here in the U.S., but it's been in the big growing regions of the Black Sea, Russia, Romania, Ukraine. We talk about big wheat crops in around the world having been impacted adversely here in the past season, but not so much to give us an alarm when we look at the balance sheet. Not like soybeans, where we're as tight as we are on a domestic and global level. But still, when we come out of this crop and we see that we do have fears about, say, the Western Plains leaning as dry as they are, as we have wheat coming out of dormancy into the production season, there are these questions that keep underlying support under the wheat market for now. So we're going to wait and see again how does the Western hard red wheat crop come out of the season, and how do we fare for exports for the soft red stuff? The usual questions.
Right. We're focusing on the seasonality. Now, one thing that has not really been trading seasonally this past year have been the livestock markets, and the meats in particular. We talk a lot about the cattle industry, but the hog industry has a story going. When we look at lean hog pricing, Joe, where do we sit today, and what's your expectation as we grind through the rest of 2021?
You're right about that counter-seasonal trend for the meats. I think that's been in part the disruption due to COVID. Also some weather disruptions here this winter that have shut down packers. We've really seen the hogs take off, and that's been a product of really strong demand. And just generally speaking, we don't have the pork stocks here in the U.S. That could change, but to your point, seasonally, might take a little bit later in the summer this year for those stocks to draw down.
As those stocks draw down, what's your target in the lean hog market as we get through the summer, perhaps into fall?
Well, right now we're looking at $100 on lean hog futures, and that's the big test. And we have seen hogs get above that mark, but I think that's to a point where we're seeing some really good value on behalf of producers, and we likely see some pushback there.
All right. Joe Camp from Comstock Investments.
Chad Colby's look at agriculture technology comes your way next, brought to you by the IBM Watson Decision Platform. Combining AI with Internet of Things data to help agribusiness increase yields, improve quality, and drive sustainability.
Technology is important, all the more so when we're working from home. Earlier this week, my laptop hard drive crashed, completely broke down, and I tell you what, I wish I had seen Chad's tech piece from this week.
Are you in the market for a new computer? Hi everyone, I'm Chad Colby, and on this week's tech segment, honestly, I don't know if you're going to believe me when you see the performance from this new MacBook from Apple. You can see my old one sitting there. That's about a 4-year-old 15-inch model. It was about $4,500 with all the bells and whistles. This new computer I got, even with the upgraded hard drive, is still under $2,000, so less than half the money. Now, I will tell you, at launch, they only offered it in a 13-inch size. It looks the same as the old model, but that's where things change. This one has Apple's new M1 processor. Now, there are some limitations to the 13-inch size. It only has 2 ports on the side of it, or the USB Type-Cs, where the 15 inches got 4. It only allows me to hook up one monitor to it instead of multiple. You can see right here in my left hand, that's what I'm going to do. That's the plug-in that will also power the computer, also hooks to another monitor. The nice part about that monitor, it has additional ports on it as well, as you can see that I use, for your cell phone to charge or hard drives, those kind of things. But what I want to bring to your attention is the raw performance from this new machine. Look at some of the data here from Geekbench, if you haven't seen it. And that green bar is this machine, and you don't have to go back very far. And this machine, in a lot of categories, is twice as good. In some places, 10 times as good. I use Final Cut Pro to edit my segments, and you can see right here, I'm advancing the video manually, and there is no lag in this. It is incredible, the performance. The other thing worth mentioning, the battery life is nearly 20 hours, and you can use all those attachments that you have laying around. You might need an adapter like this. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad. I tell you what, that looks really exciting, but I'm waiting for the day when we don't need adapters to connect additional products. Folks, don't go away. We'll be back later in this program. We'll be taking a look at the Mega Cutter from New Holland. Thanks for joining us on This Week in Agribusiness. Farmers have been getting more sustainable every year since, well, the start of farming, but it hasn't always been measured. The Association of Equipment Manufacturers recently did a study that confirmed that precision planting is making agriculture more efficient and more sustainable. But they're not the only ones who have been calculating these numbers. Max had a chance to talk with John Newton about a recent study out of the EPA.
Yeah, Mike, with so much attention on emissions and carbon greenhouse with the focus on agriculture, how are we doing? There's an annual assessment of that, I'm told. Let's check in on that with John Newton at the American Farm Bureau Federation offices. The EPA evaluates this on a regular basis, do they not, John?
That's true. Each year, the EPA, not only do they release a draft inventory of greenhouse gas emissions. In February, that draft report's open for a comment period, but they release a final report in the spring. And so we just saw the first preview of greenhouse gas emissions for 2019. And importantly, it includes a whole chapter on agricultural emissions as well as carbon sinks. So that's efforts to capture carbon in the soil.
You said 2019. I assume that's the latest one that has been done?
That's correct. So we're generally on a 2-year lag here.
Basically, what does it show? We have a benchmark of a couple of years at least behind this. How are we doing?
Well, I think when you look at total U.S. Greenhouse gas emissions, they've remained relatively stable year over year. When we look on the ag side, agricultural emissions are just over 650 million metric tons. I think we're up about 1% from 2018. But the important component when you look at the agricultural emissions, and that's something that we highlighted in the study, is we've also got to take into consideration our productivity gains, the fact that we're feeding 80 million more people today than 30 years ago. So when you look at agricultural emissions from that lens, we're actually having a smaller footprint and getting better year over year.
Using fewer livestock to do that, is that right?
That's right. So, fewer head of dairy cow, but think about this. We're producing billions of more bushels of corn today than what we did 30 years ago, billions of pounds of more milk today than 30 years ago, billions of pounds of more pork today than 30 years ago, yet agricultural emissions over the last 30 years have only gone up by 12%. The fact that we're feeding 80 million more people than 30 years ago is also important. So when you adjust for our population gains as well as our ag productivity gains, agricultural emissions have actually gone down by 15 to 25% on a per unit level.
Now, you said there's a comment period. I assume American Farm Bureau will be weighing in to point out the fact that indeed our productivity has gained during this period of time rather substantially.
Well, we've been working with the EPA for a number of years, to highlight the positive story of agriculture. We did it through, EPA Smart Sector program, where they had an entire series on agriculture that talked about our productivity gains as well as the role of agriculture in the broader U.S. economy. So again, we look forward to communicating with new EPA Administrator Regan to highlight the importance of agriculture. And more importantly, when you think about agriculture's role in managing the soils through our management of grasslands and wetlands and pasture lands and forest ground and croplands, we're actually, in a pretty good position to even capture more carbon in the soil. And in 2019, carbon sinks were over 750 million metric tons. And that was equivalent to taking 12% of U.S. greenhouse gas emissions offline. So agriculture is in a good position to help achieve these climate goals.
There's going to be quite a bit of discussion, of course, at the federal level. Is it likely USDA would fall back on some of these EPA numbers for the decisions that they'd be making?
Well, I think the EPA numbers, they align with the International Panel on Climate Change. And those are estimates that were formulated with the United Nations. So we do get good numbers from the EPA. I would assume that USDA will lean on those numbers. But more importantly, USDA has indicated that they want to lean on farmers too, and they want agriculture to have a seat at the table. So that's why we're so engaged on this effort. We want to make sure that our members' voices are heard, that the agricultural community, their voices are heard, and that anything we do to achieve the climate goals is a voluntary and incentive-based approach.
Farmers are still a little bit in limbo here, are they not? Now, I know some that are actually signed up in the private sector, getting some compensation for carbon credits, but those are few and far between, aren't they, John?
Well, I think right now people are starting to stand up their carbon programs. There are a number of companies out there that are paying farmers for the carbon that they're capturing in the soil. But, all of those programs look a little bit different in terms of the length of the contract, whether it's a 1 year, 5 year, or 10-year contract, how much they're paying a grower for the carbon that they're capturing in the soil. So we're seeing that, but we're also, evaluating ways in which USDA can play a role in this process, maybe through the verification of the carbon credits or water quality credits or air quality credits that you're generating. So there's a role both for the private market and the government to achieve our climate goals.
John, we appreciate your expertise here. Thanks for joining us from the American Farm Bureau Federation.
Thanks, Max. Thanks, John. It's vital that agriculture gets the credit for the work we're doing when it comes to environmental sustainability. So it's great to see folks paying attention to those reports coming out of the EPA. Don't go anywhere. A little bit later in the program, we will be discussing raising sheep amongst the solar panels in Canada. So stay with us here on This Week in Agribusiness.
This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. Renewable energy is a hot topic of conversation, and farmers across North America are seeing wind farms and solar farms move on to the landscape. What does that mean for those folks that live out there? Well, we're going to talk about that. We've got Lindsay Smith. She is the owner of Shady Creek Lamb Company, and some of our Canadian friends might recognize her. She's a field editor for Real Agriculture. Lindsay, how long have you guys been working with solar panels and sheep?
Well, so we have been grazing a 200-acre solar site, so a commercial solar installation, for 3 full seasons. We're heading into our 4th now.
How has it worked? What was the process like getting it established?
Well, so it was very much driven by we needed some more land and we couldn't really afford to buy any. And we have a solar site about 6 miles from our farm. And we approached the company. I very much cold called them. I Googled which company owned it. I sent them an email. We pitched them the idea. They were super keen. And we did a pilot project in the fall. And that spring moved the sheep in for the whole summer. And it has been going incredibly well ever since. It's a really great partnership.
So tell us a little bit about how it works. How high are the solar panels off the ground? Are the sheep able to get under them? What's the day-to-day like?
Yeah, so lots of questions about it. The panels themselves are fixed. So in some installations, of course, they tilt. Ours are fixed. They're a good 3 feet at the lowest edge. So sheep fit perfectly underneath. They're actually beautifully designed for this work because, of course, that was the challenge for the solar site, was to actually remove the vegetation right beneath those panels. Mowers just couldn't get there. So sheep are the perfect fit for this. They fit right under those panels. They clear out all the climbing vines and the trees. And of course, leave their nutrients behind to keep everything growing later.
Right, and you're paid to have your sheep graze this solar site. You're effectively the landscapers.
We prefer the term lambscapers, if you will. We do lamb there in May. Every May long weekend, we start lambing, about a flock of 400 ewes right now. But we do provide, this is a service very much. So these sites need to keep the vegetation down, of course. You don't want to shade the panels. And they would normally have to pay mowers to come in and clear the site at least 2, if not 4 times, depending on rainfalls. So it's a wonderful win-win, but it is labor intensive. So we actually move our sheep every single day. We have to, of course, so we have an employee. We do have to carry some extra insurance. There's quite a few things we have to, of course, provide, like fencing and watering and all that sort of stuff. So yes, we're paid for the service.
Fantastic. That's Lindsay Smith from Shady Creek Lamb Company.
Now, agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier brings us his farm weather forecast for the nation for the week ahead. It's presented by Pivot BioProven, the nitrogen-producing microbes that stay put, whether or not.
Well, it's time to jump into the weather. Greg, as you look out at the West Coast, we've still got a La Nina situation in play. Is that driving much in the forecast out there?
It will, especially southward into parts of California, the southwestern states, and have been sort of in and out with moisture from time to time. Basically, the Cascades on westward. Not much improvement to the east into the Rockies of late, except for parts of Big Sky. The Dakotas, 1 week, the snow cover is there. The next week, it's a thaw, and that will tend to kind of balance out here with maybe some much-needed moisture into this part of the country. The cold air relenting on northward, and it's the first in a series of frontal boundaries in a buckle, by the way, on the jet stream pattern heading across northern California and the Pacific Northwest. So there'll be some significant moisture, some lowering snow levels across the northern Sierra, the Cascades and points on eastward, and the cold air is manageable, and the snow as well is certainly appreciated across some of these spring grain areas. And note the range from rain and snow at the Canadian border to a couple of thunderstorms in through Nebraska, and a push of some colder air with another round of moisture for northern California. You melt the snow cover in the Sierra. It's about 15 inches. That's only 60% of normal. So this system is of great benefit. A couple of them actually coming ashore as the week wears on. Another feature here across parts of the central and southwest high plains with warm air clashing into cold air. And the jet stream pattern in from the southwest is the mechanism to get this a-going. So it's rain, but may come at a price with severe weather from Kansas on southward. Cold air in the desert southwest, and the rain and snow too is again much needed across the valleys of California and points on eastward.
Greg, it was just 2 weeks ago we were dealing with a 2-foot snowpack across a lot of the central plains of the Corn Belt, and that's all gone thanks to this nice little warm-up over the past 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Does that warm weather stick around?
Yeah, and I think the parts of the Corn Belt and points on eastward, we do see a pattern shift into some cooler to colder air, but typical of late wintertime. None of that barbaric stuff. Here is the leading edge in this strengthening jet stream pattern as rain and snow and warm weather as well into the eastern Corn Belt locales gets replaced by one weather system dashing into up towards the Sioux. This frontal boundary is stretched out. Here's the cold air, the snow running from about the Four Corners into the upper Midwest, and more rain and additional snow melt for the Great Lakes region and points on southward. Some of these storms as well getting close to the Ozarks, perhaps heavy and severe. It is that time of the year. Mild weather across areas of the Rio Grande. Big improvement weather-wise, but the cleanup and recovery continues on into the southern plains, the Gulf Coast area, and some severe weather. It's that time of the year for Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. Note the low pressure coming out of the southwestern sections of the country. We'll dig into West Texas cotton, ultimately head to the north and northeast with rain and snow all the way to the desert southwest, to showers and thunderstorms and a spring, almost summer-like feel for outdoor endeavors. Yeah, some field work trying to get going from the delta on southward.
And now, Greg, I saw on your map there you had a couple of severe weather events look like they were making their way up the Ohio Valley. What does the East Coast look like?
Yeah, they really don't need any more rain in the Ohio Valley. Kentucky, Tennessee, points on southward. You may catch a break farther south with field work, but in the meantime, active weather pattern. The mild breezes feel pretty good. The temperatures have returned to normal across the northern sections of New England. Cooler to colder air across the upper Midwest, and this frontal boundary with a string of lows tracking southwest to northeast. You get this particular upper air pattern, and it's a wide swath of moisture in one form or another, from showers and thunderstorms from about the Mississippi on westward to some snow for the upper Midwest, and a wide range of temperatures as well, and soil conditions throughout much of the Corn Belt. Nice to get some dry time, extended dry time in these waterlogged areas of the Carolinas, back through the mid-south and deep south. Onshore flow, a couple of showers expected down through Florida. Note the cold front across parts of the southern plains, and severe weather already getting going early in the week across Texas and west of the Mississippi. That will be expanding with time. Showers and thunderstorms here. Meanwhile, warm, dry weather across the interior southeast, up across the Carolinas. Dry time too for much of the Tennessee Valley. A couple of more showers will continue off the Atlantic and the Gulf later into the week across much of the Sunshine State.
Now, Greg Solier is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country. Presented by Pivot Bio Proven. Visit pivotbio.com to find a representative near you.
Well, we're talking weather, and we can't talk about weather, Greg, without talking about the cold snap that happened across the center of this country 2 weeks ago, which you called. We had this cold all the way down in the Rio Grande. We've got this footage here from our friends at Texas Farm Bureau. It was devastating.
That's right. Unrelenting, boy. There's no way to plan for upper teens and low 20s that goes past the Rio Grande Valley in the heart of South Texas citrus. And this will be sort of a cleanup and recovery and rebuilding mode that's going to go on for the weeks to come, along with feed requirements, livestock, etc. So, yeah, kind of a historic thing, no doubt about it.
It really is, Greg. As you look out for precipitation, what do you expect to see in this coming week?
Well, it's been a nice turnaround in temperatures, and the weather's been relatively quiet for cleanup and recovery. That will change. It is almost mid-March, and March starts the severe weather season in this part of the country and up towards the Ohio. And looky here, at least we get some drought relief. It may come at a price, but an inch or two for parts of the southern plains. Don't need any more water with time. This is late in the week over the southeastern part of the country. Here's the average rain snow line. So, yeah, while we've melted it away, we're going to put it back down, accumulating snow for the upper Midwest. This is good news here, along with the dryness and drought here, much of the plains, and there is significant moisture late season for California and the Pacific Northwest.
How about the week after, starting March 15th? What do you see?
Now, from a temperature standpoint here, look at the cool and cold as we at least astronomically clock into the springtime season on the 20th, a little before 5 in the morning Central Time. Look at the warmth. That'll feel pretty fine with outdoor chores and maybe some footing issues, though, for man and beast here. Look at the cold air and the jet stream pattern from southwest to northeast, a harbinger of good news, more moisture here. Parts of the plains, not good news, but it's that time of the year for severe weather. We'll keep an eye on the streams and rivers, ice jamming with some flooding potential here in the moisture into the northeast New England Gulf Coast area, high and dry.
Greg, you mentioned that March is kind of coming in like a lamb. How's it going to leave?
Probably like a lion, I suspect, especially with this kind of cold here. This is almost midwinter up through Big Sky Country of the Feel. Look at the range of temperatures over a short distance. Summertime over the southeastern part of the country will certainly help with soil temperature readings, but we get this scenario: string of lows, late season snow for the upper Midwest, downpours and severe weather here, dry in West Texas and Southern California. The moisture pattern for Big Sky Country and points on to the west.
Now, about that first full week of April, what are you seeing?
Now, hopefully for a little more springtime environs, but not the story. This is going to be a feature that kind of builds here with time, goes here as we get deeper into April. So yeah, cool and cold on the move. Here's the warmth over the eastern part of the country. Frost freeze potential even into the central and southern valleys of California. That is late, and no shortage of moisture. Pacific Northwest, northern and central plains. I don't think we have much field work going here early style across much of the Corn Belt locales, and the wet weather pattern is back into play over the deep southeastern part of the country.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
In Max's Tractor Shed this weekend, we're looking ahead toward the next Mecum Gone Farmin' auction. They're going to be selling some tractors that belong to an old friend of ours who passed away a few weeks ago. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Store-Lock Tool Cabinets. I got to tour the plant the other day to see that remarkable quality that goes into those beautiful cabinets. Call them up. Talk with them about your needs. Ask for the boss. Ask for Mike if he's in town. Tell him Max sent you. 1-800-STORE-LOCK, STORLOC. Well, on the radio around Cape Girardeau, Missouri, that big region served by the big country station at Cape Girardeau, everybody knew Cousin Carl. Bill Anderson was his name. He owned the station. I have so many stories I could tell you about Bill, but one thing you need to know, he was a tremendous supporter of agriculture. And he also loved his old tractors. We were together on some tractor rides and at some events. Let me show you 3 of his that will sell at the Mecum Gone Farmin' Spring Classic coming up the end of the month. There is a 1955 Mini Mo UB Special LP. There's a 1969 Minneapolis G900 LP. Oh yeah, Cousin Carl loved his LP tractors. And there's a 1968 IH 656 that will sell too. They'll be back at Davenport for this event coming up the end of the month. Mark Stock is here with the Big Iron Report. He checks in every weekend. Let's see what's crossing the block at Big Iron.
Well, Max, we're into March and spring is in the air. We've got over 2,000 items selling in 21 different states on BigIron.com. Arkdale Farms, Inc., they are retiring out of Sterling, Kansas. They've got a John Deere 8330 mechanical front tractor, a John Deere 9650 combine. They've also got a John Deere 925 25-foot flex head and an 893 8-row 30 corn head. Kurt Foster is retiring from Earlville, Illinois. They've got a John Deere 8430 mechanical front tractor and a John Deere 8520T track tractor. Also check out their John Deere 9670 combine. Kenneth Shepherdson is retiring from Batesland, South Dakota. Selling on Big Iron will be his Bestway Field Pro 4 pull-type sprayer, his John Deere 9860 combine, and his John Deere 1750 Maximerge 8-row 30 planter. Matt Neal is from Frankfort, Indiana, folks, and he's got a John Deere 8430 mechanical front tractor, only 2,800 hours. And Whitestone Ag from Alicia, Arkansas has got a Case IH Magnum 225 CVT mechanical front tractor. All of these items will be sold to the highest bidder on our Wednesday, March 10th Big Iron online auction. Max, go to that website for all the latest information.
The FFA Chapter Tribute is sponsored by Nationwide, the #1 farm insurer in the country. To register your FFA chapter, go to nationwidesupportsffa.com. That's nationwidesupportsffa.com. Nationwide, we stand for you.
This Week in Agribusiness is proud to continue our spotlight of FFA members across the country, and now we are talking to the state officer team from Iowa. And joining us this week is Devin DeVore. He's the South Central State VP. Devin, what prompted you to get active in FFA?
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me here this morning. I decided to join FFA because I showed livestock growing up through elementary and middle school. So I just thought it was the right fit for me to be in the ag room and get involved there. And then as I started to get more and more involved in FFA and learn about the different things just outside of showing livestock, I really started to enjoy my experience and get more and more involved and active within my own FFA chapter.
And you graduated or you went to Osceola, the Big Chief FFA chapter. And what prompted you to work your way into leadership?
So like I said, as I started to get more and more involved and see the different opportunities outside of just my local chapter, I decided to try some different things out and get involved first at the district level. I served 2 years as a district FFA officer for the South Central District. I really enjoyed traveling around, meeting new people, talking to FFA members across my district. And then as I transferred into college, I just wanted to continue that awesome experience. So I decided to run for state office to continue serving the members across the state of Iowa.
And you've been doing it virtually, you've been doing it in person. This has been a weird year for a person in your role. How's it gone?
Absolutely. It's certainly been different and challenging to say the least, but we have been finding different ways to get creative and interact with members in whatever way we can. one thing that we've done here in Iowa is the letter project. So we wrote handwritten letters to FFA members across the state.
Very cool. Keep them active, keep them engaged. Thank you so much. Devin DeVore, South Central State Vice President from Iowa.
Now, Samuelson Says. Insight and commentary from Orion Samuelson.
Let me tell you at the beginning of Samuelson Says that you probably won't hear much in the way of a new idea. After stating my opinions and feelings and beliefs in agriculture for the past 5 decades, not always easy to come up with new ideas. So let me come up with an idea you've heard frequently. We have new members in Congress, we have new members in the administration team, and they may not have heard what you as a farmer, a rancher, or a food producer would like in the way of agricultural policy. Take every opportunity to let them know. County fairs, state fair visits, farm organization meetings, let them know what you think we should have in the way of agricultural policy as we start working on writing a new farm bill. Because with the change in leadership, we don't have former secretaries of agriculture, except this year. We do have a former secretary, but many other people on Capitol Hill and in farm organization leadership weren't around the last time we wrote a farm bill. So let them know. Take the time to talk to them at county and state fairs, at farm organization meetings. Take the time to send an email, and hopefully we'll be able to write a farm bill that will be the right one for the future and the right one for policy for consumers and food producers. So be the squeaky wheel and hope that you get the grease. But if you don't let them know what grease you'd like to see, probably won't happen. My thoughts on Samuelson Says: be safe, be well.
Don't go away. Up next, we'll be looking at the Mega Cutter from New Holland as part of the Farm Progress virtual experience. It might be getting a little warmer outside, but the cold will be returning, and if you find yourself locked on the couch with bad weather outside, get online. Head up farmprogressshow.com to see what's on display at the virtual experience. This week, we're taking a look at the Mega Cutter from New Holland.
The Mega Cutter 512 533 and T8.385 PLM Intelligence from New Holland. Commercial forage operations require high-capacity performance, advanced technology, and durability to handle tough conditions. With a 33.5-foot cutting width, Mega Cutter 512 front and 533 triple mower conditioners are built for speed and capacity, up to 50 acres per hour. Harvesting high-value feed demands a cleaner cut, so the broad range of header motion allows each cutter bar to follow the terrain precisely. Keeping knives sharp is easy with the standard quick-change knife system. It allows you to change damaged knives fast, or flip an entire set to get back to mowing and keep on schedule. When the unexpected happens, the Mega Cutter 533 hydro pneumatic system ensures each cutter bar can respond, swinging up and away to resist damage, while tractor connectivity provides advanced diagnostics and reduces downtime. Productive operators stay connected. The IntelliView touchscreen places machine control at your fingertips. In-field functions and IntelliSteer auto guidance are configurable to the Command Grip multifunction handle. Faster hay drying not only means beating the rain, it means getting crop out of the field with maximum feed quality. You have two effective solutions for fast drying of high quality feed. Gentle rubber chevron intermeshing rolls for alfalfa, or flail tine conditioning for grass hay. Visit NewHolland.com or a New Holland dealer to learn more.
You can see that video and 99 others from the Farm Progress virtual experience at farmprogressshow.com. With that, we want to thank all of you for taking the time to tune in. Be sure to join us next week here on This Week in Agribusiness when we cover everything that's happening in the world of agriculture. Thanks so much and have a great week, everybody.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Kubota. Shape your world. This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.